Buds, Class 231 builds a specific kind of fortitude. Some use it to run for hundreds of miles. Bill Brown has used it to cross the Hudson River and push back against the corrupt undercurrents of a American legal system and broader institution. He's joining us today because he refuses to let a system define how we honor community and service. This is the fight or flight, no performance, just transmission and clarity. Before we get into it, a word on how we operate. Fight or flight exists for one reason: real conversation, real people, real stakes. What you're about to hear are the words of our guest, his experience, his account, his fight. They are his alone, solely his views and opinions, not endorsed, not condoned by any past, present, or future affiliate, associate, contributor, or collaborator of this show. Some of what our guest raises today is the subject of ongoing litigation. Those matters are allegations, not adjudicated fact. We are not here to confirm them, dispute them, or litigate them for him. We are here to let him speak in his own words and let you draw your own conclusions. We do not script. We do not sanitize. We do not chase the algorithm with outrage dressed as insight. We sit, we listen, we let people speak whole. Desmond Tutu said it best. My humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together. So our ask today is simple: grace. For our guest, for yourself, for the collective us. Let's begin. Bill Brown, it's great to have you.
Hey, Miles, how you doing?
Dude, at you. Thank you. You're coming to us live, coming to us hot. I appreciate you. 3 questions to open. They're always the same, and you tackle them any way you want in whatever order you'd like. Mr. Bill Brown, who are you? Who have you been? And most importantly, who are you becoming?
Bill Brown is a Navy SEAL Iraq veteran attorney. He's somebody that, like everyone else, has had different stages of evolution. I think different stages of my life had influenced my perspective and my goals. I'm somebody that loves our country. I believe in the ideas transcribed in our Constitution: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, equality, due process. And I actually believe that one of the greatest things in our Constitution is that the individual's rights are sacred. And I love the evolution of our country. I think that's one of the things that makes us special. Like myself, I have different forms of evolution. We had these great ideas transcribed in a constitution, and our founding fathers were flawed, but we started to meet those high measures, transcribe those great ideas. And you talk about the civil rights. You talk about the Civil War, the only nation that went to war for itself to free others. And you talk about the civil rights movement, you talk about the women's suffrage movement, you talk about the gay and lesbian movement. I think all those different forms where we evolved internally to meet these great ideas transcribed in the Constitution are all beautiful things. And I love our country and I love our people. I am an advocate for veterans 100%. I love men and women who put it on the line for our country. And I am an advocate for free speech and free religion. And I am an advocate against what I believe are anti-social ideologies, and that would be jihadism. I've seen the horror of jihad. A lot of Americans that haven't seen it don't understand it. In my opinion, I'm against communism because I don't believe the government makes better decisions than individuals. And I'm also against the woke ideology that really is intolerant and cancels all others. It kind of reminds me of like how Genghis Khan used to roll. And so I am a strong advocate against those things. So that's who Bill Brown is now. Bill Brown is somebody who's an advocate. I believe that the democracy, when you think about the birthplace of democracy or the ideas of democracy were in Athens. And basically where different Athenians would come and debate the big issues of the day and had a voice. And I think it's important for all Americans to have a voice. And I think true diversity is diversity of thought. And so Bill Brown is engaged, uh, promoting those ideas, protecting veterans. I'm an attorney at Paul Latoy Law Group. It's the premier law firm for warfighters in our nation, 100%. We represent the Secretary of War. We represented lots of high-profile SEALs and veterans and service members. And I'm honored to be a part of that. My boss, Tim Parlatore, is probably the best trial attorney of our era. And yeah, that's who Bill Brown is, and that's what Bill Brown is about, and that's what Bill Brown's engaged in.
Bill, thank you for that. You left out a couple descriptions that since our first contact and some research that I've done. So I'd like to share a little bit with you, if I may. You offer a diversity of thought and a transmission of deep clarity. And I believe that words matter, and I appreciate that. A deep thinker. I think you're also open source in that you're adaptive. You're coming up with new concepts, new ways of applying yourself. The storyline's remarkable, and you glossed over it. So I'm going to go into a little bit more specificity, if I may. By the record, Bud Class 231, that's a specific kind of fortitude. You spent time on two different fronts. You carry a trident in the Navy. You did 3 combat deployments.
I am a combat vet, but 3 deployments, 1 combat deployment in Iraq.
Law degree, partners you'd mentioned, a whistleblower suit against a former employer that was critical for deep thinking and precedent, and now a 3.5-mile swim across the Hudson that a city agency doesn't want to permit. So we'll put a pin in that and come back into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. So first and foremost, and we say this with reverence, thank you for your service.
Thank you for your patriotism.
Your service in uniform and out of uniform. The out of uniform is resonating loudly and is going to touch a lot of lives, both those that have been lost and those that continue living. So that's a celebration and a standing ovation, sir. So I appreciate that. And let's not forget a young swimmer who's competitive, who you're coaching and teaching the morals of competition and getting ahead and everything that goes to the home front. And we know that that's critical in making all
Nice.
deep thinkers and warfighters get after it. Awesome stuff. Bill, I'd like to get into a little bit about the evolution of yourself in a little bit of detail. And I'd like to ask a question and have a true or false answer to this, and then explore it with you. So here's the statement. A warrior who can't keep evolving past the uniform does not find peace.
True.
Why?
Well, it's one of so in the military, you have certain tasks. You have certain people that you're surrounded by. And it's not a 9-to-5 job, and you're young. And it's almost like when someone is very young, when a puppy or a kitten's very young, and someone's kind to that, or a certain way, they're imprinted. Those values are imprinted, and it's also an institutionalized system. It's 24/7 sometimes for long periods of time, and it's also something where think about it. As soon as you go in, they're cutting off all your hair. You're bald. And then you're going through these intense type of training, requirements. And so what happens is, and here's the other thing, depending on what in some combat units, infantry units, and spec ops, a lot of the stuff you're doing is very high risk. And to be sincere with you, it has a huge adrenaline hit. And and it's a lot of it's very aggressive and as aggressive as men can get. And it's very close. And so what happens is you have these social norms that are in some units they're totally different, and these different requirements in the military that are distinct from the outside. And now all of a sudden when you get out of the military, those social norms, those support systems, uh, the way especially to be sincere, men in combat units and infantry units, young men, aggressive men, now you got to transition to a society where that's not how that those social norms are they're different. And it's so funny because let's think about this. You can be a great basketball player and not be a great swimmer, right? You can be a great football player and not be a good soccer player. Well, the truth is you can do great in the military and not do so great in the civilian world. And the same thing, a lot of people in the civilian world probably would have a difficult time being in the military. In my opinion, a lot of men and women who sign up in the military, they kind of have the guardian spirit. And I view myself as a protector, and I think a lot of men and women in the military do as well. And I think one of the things that happens is that's why you see a lot of police officers, a lot of firefighters, similar guardian spirits, and a similar type of occupations where guess what? They're wearing uniforms. They're working in teams again. They're doing things outside. Sometimes they have weapons. They definitely have tools. And so it makes a lot of sense why a lot of veterans, they're heavily represented in those type of protective fields, those with the guardian spirit, I call it. But at the same time, it's different. Here's for me, a guy who didn't have a degree, winded up being a JTAC, Joint Terminal Air Controller, without a college degree, basically coordinating and directing when military aircraft can do strikes, to a point where I'm all of a sudden in a community college with 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids and very liberal professors. And so there's a huge culture shift. And then at the same time, to be sincere, that's one whole level of it, which is extreme in itself. Now you have another level that's also extreme, Miles, and that is bias towards honorable military service, especially in academia. It's thick, especially in the professional fields. It's thick and heavy. And I've experienced some severe veteran discrimination in actually the biggest law firm in New Jersey, McCarter and English. And so when you have these academics and some of the stuff that I experienced at Rutgers Law School was a disgrace as well. And so when you have these academics, intellectuals that don't live in a bubble, they live in a bubble and they've never seen parts of the world where they've never faced jihadism. They've seen it on 9/11 on the TV, but they've never seen it up close. They don't see that, to be sincere, that it's just like our body, right? Our body has these antibodies, our white blood cells. And when things come in that are destructive to our body, they go on the front lines and handle it. And it's the same thing with our military. It's the same thing with our police. It's the same thing with our firefighters. And if you live in that bubble and you've been protected, you've been a free rider your whole existence, and you've been in this academic professional bubble, you don't see it. And your group think and your group mentality, you become, I think, willfully blind sometimes. And then let's be sincere. Now you have a veteran come in, and he's or she is coming in, and her perspectives are going to be much different. And conformity in a lot of these bubbles is not debatable. To be sincere, it's not. And that's one of the, so those are some of the spheres of influence that make it very hard for veterans to transition. Now, here's especially true, especially for men in combat units. And here's there also truth, especially for white veterans in those combat units. Because to be sincere in our society, unfortunately, today, um, it's almost like you have this other bias that's not true. And that is that, this whole like racist thing going on. And so there's so many different uh, gravities that can get a guy or a girl coming from the military off track. And now here's another thing. You're talking about the high adrenaline pumps. Like, let me tell you, when you're jumping out of an airplane, when you're blowing things up, when you're shooting, moving with other guys, when you're shooting Carl Gustav rockets, like all this stuff, like blowing doors open, grabbing guys out in the middle of the night. When you come back, and to think you've done that for years and years, that all of a sudden you're like your body is accustomed to dealing with high threat, dangerous, dynamic situations, especially in those kind of upper tier units. It's much, more difficult because at the same time, now you're dealing with all this, some of it, to be honest, resistance, especially in academia and the professional fields, unless you just keep your head down and don't say anything. And some veterans do that. Some veterans do that, and that tactic's not necessarily wrong, because if they can be the gray man, they're just quiet, get their degree, don't say anything about their service as much as possible. Let all that woke ideology, all that stuff, all that, to be sincere, anti-military stuff, they just and focus on getting their degree without, but you see, to me, that's a mistake, because especially in college and law school, because that's supposed to be the place where ideas are shared and debate should be free. And to me, that's where, to be honest, cancel culture was at its strongest. And if you, let's be sincere, you just rewind the clock a year, 2 years ago. If you supported Israel, or if you were a Jewish student at some of our most premier colleges and campuses, your very life could be in trouble. Like, the intimidation was extreme. Now let's talk about something else, how bad it was. You had Charlie Kirk. We talked about Athens, really the birthplace of the idea of democracy. So Charlie Kirk is traveling from campus to campus, and he's doing what? Open debate. Open debate. It's kind of what the Athenians were all about. Basically the founders of this idea of democracy, where everyone free speech. And what happened to him? Not only was he executed on a college campus publicly, but then it was celebrated. And so uh, that tells you how intense the cancel culture was, the reprisals to it, and even the risk. And so now imagine trying to be somebody in the military who's seen the horrors of jihad, which I have 100%. And now I know that. I don't care what anyone says. When you're blowing up women and regular people for no reason, but to intimidate others, I don't care about what your religion is. That's horror. Like, I don't care. That's horror, and I'm against it to the day I die. And so there's all these different, huge, like, different gravity, spheres of gravity. Now let's think about something else. So, guys, One of the mistakes with the VFW, I love the VFW because they kind of have like safe harbor, a place where vets can come together, right? But the negative nexus to it is a bar. And so to me, if the look, and what are those guys, some of those guys and gals doing? They're self-medicating with alcohol, and and then what happens is they build a lifestyle around it. And I don't think it's what I. It's like some guys, some guy. Now here's the truth: some people handle different things different. I've had plenty of friends that have died in the military. I've had plenty of family members that died. I can tell you the truth, the loss of my mother, all my military experience, all my friends that have died in combat or died by suicide. The loss of my mother, without a doubt, is one of the things that has hit me the most. And now I've been through some severe traumatic experiences, but that's just the truth. And different things affect different people differently. Now I've had an experience in the SEAL teams when I was a young SEAL, where I got very, very drunk. And thank God we were up in the mountains in Germany, and they taped me upside down to a spinal board, and they put me in it was at this way up in the mountains, some little lodge at some camp, and they put me in a stall in a spinal board upside down. They rigorous taped me, so when I threw up, I didn't choke on myself, and they kept me there about 8 hours. And afterwards, you know what? I never had another alcohol related incident again in my life, because I realized when you're under a lot of stress, because we were doing some pretty dynamic stuff up in those mountains when I in Garmisch, Germany, and I realized when you're under a lot of stress and you drink, it's like it's like two bad drivers headed the same way, likely going to be like drama. And so it was a real eye awakening call for me. So one of the things, like with Beyond the Brotherhood, which is sponsoring the New York City, they're the beneficiary of this year's New York City SEAL Swim. What they do is they help SEAL veterans in that tough transition process. Because here's the truth: I do believe, like my pappy was a World War II veteran, and he was old school. He didn't say anything about it, right? Those were strong men. He said nothing about his experience downrange, and he went to war against the Japanese. The uh, but I think that was a mistake, because it's like this cup, and let's say there's stress, stress, stress. If I don't purge it, sooner or later something's going to happen. And I've seen that happen in the SEAL teams, where guys are under a lot of stress, and all of a sudden something happens. And because I've seen it happen a couple times, I realize, okay, this is what happened. And it's not just this little incident here, and you think, hey, a huge overreaction. This guy's been carrying this and it's been building for a while. Look at, like, hey, I have a friend. He going after some Al Qaeda in Baghdad. He comes in the front room, and there's two guys right there up on these steps, and they open up on him. It's like Pulp Fiction, and he kills him. Thank God, really close, really close. And what happened was, imagine it's like somehow they missed him. It's unbelievable. And I'm not going to drop his name, but he had a hard time doing it because it was up close. And then what he wound up having an alcohol related incident, no shit, in Baghdad, where he took a Humvee and tried to run through a checkpoint. Now they sent him home, right? But if you realize, hey, there's a reason why that happened, and it wasn't just because of this. It was, look, he just killed two guys up close and they literally shots ricocheted all around him, and he had a hard time dealing with it. And so one of the things and I'll tell you something else, and this is the truth. I, as SEAL, uh, I really would caution anybody who's been in an infantry unit, who's been in a spec ops unit, about talking to some off the cuff therapist, especially if their ideology is very far left. I don't trust them. There's no other way to say it. And I really, to me, I think I think it's good that we talk to people, and a lot of times it's best that we talk to each other because it's more likely. But sometimes I do believe you need to talk to people, and have no doubt I do. I talked to a therapist at a 22-0, and 22-0 is a group that tries basically patriotic, trusted therapists, right? That, in my opinion, they're not going to go at cocktail parties and tell about your stories. And when I have friends that call me up and I say, "Hey, man, you're struggling right now," that's who I recommend. So, any SEAL, any veteran out there, any service member, any police officer, firefighter that looking to talk to somebody that they can trust is in a moment of crisis, uh, Google up 22-0. They have some really trusted therapists. Yep. So, and that's one of the things I like about Beyond the Brotherhood, because Beyond the Brotherhood takes SEALs and they help young SEALs coming out in that transition. And sometimes not young SEALs, sometimes guys who did 20 plus years. But they help those SEALs because the truth is, sometimes being in the SEAL teams is like driving a car really fast. And it can be really cool when it's straight. But when those roads start turning and there's traffic and you got to weave in and out, all of a sudden it's stress, it's high stress. And to be sincere, that parable is about on point, because the stuff that SEALs do is about as high risk as you can do things. Think about this: jumping out of an airplane with hundreds of pounds on your back with a gun, swimming with a diving with a gun with literally a bomb on your back. Like, that's that's reality if you're a SEAL. Uh, and so yeah, so there's a lot of so me, one of the paths to a greater percentage chance of success is one, college. I really believe when a young man or woman who hasn't got a college education yet, I think when they get out of the military, the number one thing they should do is utilize their GI Bills, and they should absolutely go to college. Because here's one of the things: when you talk about your question, you have to adapt. And going to college, what does it does? It does two things. It does a couple things for you. One is, if you had a high intensity type of service, one of the things it does, like, it keeps your mind off some of that stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, some of my best and worst times were in the SEAL teams, right? But some of it is victorious moments, and some of it is like, holy. And so when you're going to college, you're focused on your studies. You have no choice. You're focused on your studies. And so it keeps your mind busy, and it keeps you moving forward at a time when you're very vulnerable, kid, because that transition from the military to civilian world, especially the first couple years, I think is very high risk for veterans that aren't focused. Because one of the other things is, when you're in the military, you're always working, you always have a task, you're always busy. Now, when you're out, if you are not focused, if you're not on the hunt, and that's what I think too. I think SEALs specifically, and guys in Spec Ops, when we're on the hunt, when we're moving forward a goal or a task or a mission, we're a lot better than when we're not. And the other thing about SEALs and guys and women in Spec Ops is, here's the truth: to make it through those units, you have to have extremely high will, strong will. It's just the truth. You To make it through those units, you have to have strong will. When you have strong will, you can either accomplish a lot very fast, or you can self-destruct really fast. And so, to me, going to college right afterwards is the perfect parachute, because now it's going to soften your landing, because now you're building other social networks. The other thing is you're also remarketing yourself. You're learning a new skill, and you're picking up. Now you're not just a veteran. Now you're a college educated veteran, and I think it really that is the right path. And the other thing is, I really believe in adventure therapy, like the New York City SEAL swim, because what that does is that brings us together, and I call it. It's like when you're in the SEAL teams, it's a adrenaline rush. Rush is like everything you're doing. You're coming into a house. You know what I'm saying? Like everything you're doing is a rush. You're on a helicopter going from A to B at nighttime. You're jumping into the ocean at nighttime. Everything is imagine jumping out of an airplane in the middle of the night. You know what I mean? Into the ocean. Like that is a rush. You, Imagine being on these fast ass boats. It's like out of something out of Miami Vice with so many guns it looks like a porcupine to go take down a ship and climb these big ass cargo ships on a caving ladder at night. That's a rush. All that stuff is high adrenaline pumping stuff with very aggressive, beautiful men, beautiful men. But the truth is, now all of a sudden I'm back and I got, and all of a sudden I got to deal with, a wife, a kid, a divorce, some liberal ass professor giving me crap because I served my country, kind of, shame me in class, all a million things that have happened. Law firm partners asking me how many people I killed, asking
What?
me, right? Yeah, oh, that happened 100% at McCarter and Inglis. And so when you're dealing with all that, and here's the truth, yeah. Now here's the truth. Think about this. Guys trying to intimidate you, don't know who you are, trying to mad dog you, and like it's like, well, what does a guy do? Well, I think the number one thing is go to college. That was because no matter what, you go to college, you got a college education behind you. No one can ever take a degree away from you. And then it helps you doing that transition where I think is the most high risk, those first couple years when you get out. And a guy or gal who's going to college, really you can't be successful in college if you're really partying hard. Now uh, not to say some people don't do it, but yeah. So I think those are really the keys to success. Go to college, remarket yourself, redefine yourself. So now you're not just defined as a veteran, now you're also defined as a college student or a college grad. Then what's the next thing? And think about it. You're a veteran and you got a college grad, you make yourself much more marketable. And then the next thing is adventure therapy. If you don't think you're going to go to those type of like high adrenaline type of endeavors and you're going to come back and all of a sudden not need that same type of similar outlet. So that's why you'll see a lot of guys doing jujitsu. You'll see like a lot of guys into these ultra sports, doing triathlons. That's all positive. And that's a great way to get that stuff off. And decompress. One of the things where we would jam bottles before a dive, we would jam the bottles to a certain psi, but then if the psi was a little too much, we would off gas it, right? We'd say bleeding down, and then you'd say bleeding down to give everybody a heads up. And to be honest with you, that's what adventure therapy is. You're off gassing. You're off gassing that stress. So, and then the other thing is to be honest with you, absolutely talking things out. Look, if we don't look out for each other, who won't? Who doesn't?
Yeah, Bill, let me lean in on a couple things. You dropped a lot of great content here, and I'm going to wireframe this and put it in the show notes. You talked about Beyond the Brotherhood, a 501c3 not for profit. Correct me if I'm mistaken, founded by Navy SEAL Commander Jimmy May, and that supports the Navy SEALs veterans in transition which is epic. You talked about 22-0 for mental health awareness and building skills, life skills, stress, anxiety, all the good support there. You talked about continued education as far as reapplying yourself so that you can assimilate into a new environment. Whether that environment's hostile or not is irrelevant. It's expanding your mind. And all this circles back to lessons for not standing still and movement, as long as it's positive and lawful, is important to a healthy mind, a healthy spirit, and a healthy body. And you're offering adventure therapy as an outlet and specific examples. But what impresses me is you're building a community of others to help support and celebrate the work that's being done at a uniform. And it doesn't distract from being in uniform. It's just a different engagement, a different mission. So I appreciate that. And I think we'll help distill that down and put it onto a LinkedIn post as well for anyone that wants to follow that narrative. What is deeply interesting to me and important to you, because we got a date coming up very quickly. T-shirt looks epic, and that book you flashed, that coffee table book, we're going to give a shot again. This beautiful New York City Navy SEAL adventure therapy book with cinematic photography that is worthy of a Super Bowl. Is
I mean, I'm just right here. I'm just randomly picking some pictures,
and you get chills just looking at this. It's a community of a ton of swimmers, athletes, humans just coming together to help one another. Let's create a floor. Let's create the foundation for those that don't know what the New York City SEAL Swim is about. And let me just provide a context. You've raised a tremendous amount of money. You've donated that money. You've created this event that didn't exist prior, and you've done it in a manner that celebrates those that we've lost and those that are living. So let me go politely quiet and give you the mic to talk about the actual swim. Why? How did it come about? And what is it all about?
Yeah, and what a great opportunity. It's a number one. It's about adventure therapy. Like even training up for this swim, I meet up with some guys in Seabrights, and you know what? Honestly, most of them aren't veterans. Uh, but everybody in life is going through different things, and I think adventure therapy works for everybody. And swimming with those guys in the morning is one of the highlights of my summer. But that's so the most beautiful part of New York City SEAL Swim is the beautiful Americans it brings together. When you look at the roster of all the SEALs, all the veterans, spec op veterans, guys from the Secret Service, the FBI, NYPD, NJSPD, FDNY, all these beautiful Americans that love our country, that put it on the line for our country, and then all these great patriots, regular Americans that love our country, want to do this intense physical endeavor to basically help raise money for pro charity veteran causes. This year it's Beyond the Brotherhood. That's really the most beautiful thing about this event. And now here's the other great thing. Now, when you look at people who've had a greater influence, I'm going to be sincere with you. This is a political event, 100%. But one of the things we're doing is we're kind of following Martin Luther King's example. Like when he marched, right? He had American flags with him. And one of the things his position was he was challenging everyone to meet the ideas transcribed in the Constitution, right? About equality, uh, and to hold up to the 14th Amendment. And so if you look and think about his marches, they were sending a message, right? And if you look at Mahatma Gandhi, it's the same thing. Like when they marched to the sea, they were sending a message. Well, we're absolutely sending a message as well. And we're using modern technology. We got Fox News, we got Newsmax to cover it, so the whole nation can get wind of it. And our message is this: that we are beautiful people. This nation is beautiful, and we have beautiful people. There's a reason why millions of people every year do whatever they can to become Americans, right? And that's happened for a long time. I've been to I've been to some very I don't know how to say this, but places on our planet that are extremely dangerous, extremely poor, and you know what? Ruthless, ruthless to their own. There's just no way to put it. Dangerous, ruthless, and extremely poor. It's just the truth. And in some of those nations, extreme ideologies that don't make it a safe and pleasant atmosphere by any stretch. And we have this beautiful country. We have a beautiful the ideas in our Constitution are true. Even the way our Constitution set up for the different branches of government to check and balance each other. Like, and in our progression, which I talked about earlier, and I love our country. So when we run with American flags, we hold them proud. Like there's a reason. Like even if you think about today, think about Elon Musk. Think about all these big companies. We're leading the AI, which is revolutionizing every field. We're leading on technology. Think about all these great companies that have came from Apple and things like that. All these magnificent companies that you know uh, have revolutionized our our very everyday life. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, these are Ben Franklins of our day. And we should be proud to be an American. And now here's the truth too. Uh, there is ideologies taking root now within our country that aren't good. Uh, communism has had probably in modern time caused more. I don't know, communism, jihadism. Those ideologies. They're antisocial. They're intolerant, and some of those ideologies being being repackaged and remarketed and to seem more favorable. I'm very concerned with. And when you talk, and even in New York City now, where they're talking about taking people's property rights and giving them and basically taking them and giving them to the government and redistributing them, like, and even some of this, think about a couple, even during COVID, all the infringements on civil rights. I think Elon Musk had a huge part in free speech when he purchased X. Because remember, social media and even the federal government were working together to kind of lower the volume in free speech for ideas and perspectives that, you know, that's to me, that's not the way. And that happened on almost every college campus. So democracy is a proactive process. So there's, in my opinion, there are intellectuals and entities out there and a lot of foreign influence involved in a lot of this in our social media, in our social influencers, in our colleges. If you look at how much foreign influence has been put out there by various nations to really change and manipulate. And I think one of the things this swim does is say, hey, this is who we are. We're we are a diverse, beautiful people, and we love this country, and we fall for this country, and we love those who put it on a line for a country. And that's why when we swim by the Statue of Liberty, we do 100 push-ups, 22 pull-ups to honor our nation's freedoms and civil liberties. When we swim to Ellis Island, we do 100 push-ups and 22 pull-ups to honor all the men and women who came to this country for a better life, celebrate our nation's diversity. And also, when we swam, we would run into the World Trade Center. For me, I was a SEAL on 9/11. That's where it started. And to pay respect and honor all those who lost their lives on 9/11. And when you think about 343 firefighters died on 9/11, everybody's running out, they're running in to save others. Like that's beautiful. And one of the things this swim does As for guys like me, some of the older SEALs have were SEALs on 9/11 that went to war for our country after 9/11. I think there's a lot of levels of healing here, and one of the greatest levels of healing is like think about this. James Dowdell, he's a FDNY firefighter. His father, Kevin Dowdell, was an FDNY firefighter. He comes to the event, swims. He's spoken at the event. Fred Ill the third, he's an FDNY firefighter. His father, Fred Ill, was an FDNY firefighter, killed on 9/11. He's come and swam and spoke. Michaela Cruz, she was on the 95th floor of the first tower when the initial tower got hit. The only reason why she's alive is because her friend grabbed her and made her come in the elevator. Nobody else on her floor lived. Ron DeFrancisco, he was one of the last people taken out of the rubble. He comes and speaks at the swim at the World Trade Center. Now, Rob O'Neill, he was one of the SEALs that helped kill bin Laden. He came and spoke. Now, what happens is you have 9/11 survivors, you have those who lost families on 9/11, and now they meet the war fighters, the veterans, the men and women from the community. They get a sample of war fighters, 100%, men who've done a lot of things down range against the jihadist ideology that killed almost 3,000 Americans that day. And it's a sense of healing because a lot of those SEALs have never been to New York. Some of them have, some of them haven't. This is the first time. Many of them have never met those affected by the horror of that day. And so when they get a chance, because here's the truth, if you're a good person, like if you're just a good humanity, when you kill another person, even if you have no choice, it's gonna affect you. It is gonna have be a dynamic situation in your life. And so when you get to meet people who basically had their family killed, or everybody on their entire floor was killed, and you get to hear their stories and how their survival stories, and it's so many different sense of healing on so many different levels, and that swim brings it together. Now, here's the truth: that is a beautiful, beautiful event on so many levels, and it sends a great message, a patriotic, positive message of unity, and that I believe it's cool to be a patriot. I believe, I love our nation, and you know what? That's what I'm doing. And my advocacy, I am fighting for our nation. I'm fighting for the ideas that are making our nation beautiful, and what can make our nation even, because it's a progress in progress. And the truth is, some of the stuff that's been happening in the last couple of years is scary. When you have, as a lawyer, when you have political prosecutions, that's that's scary. When you have serious concerns whether you can get a fair trial in different judicial jurisdictions, that's scary. Like, and to think that's not a reality, that's the truth. And so one of the things you try to do with this swim is send a message. And it's a message I think our country needs.
Bill, thank you. I'm going to run through a few facts uh, and fact check me along the way. 2026 will be the 8th annual swim.
Yes, sir.
Great. Head counts aren't published, but hundreds of swimmers have shown up. One recent year, you had over 300 athletes.
Yeah, last year.
Yeah. 2024, the goal was 250,000. You raised over 632,000.
We raised more.
Ways more.
Way more.
And that number continues to climb. You funded over 30 critical programs in your philanthropy from that. And this year's recipient, again, Beyond the Brotherhood, which is endorsing and supporting the program. Just for the audience, this is a 3.5 open water swim across the Hudson.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. In my opinion, corruption and the woke ideology within, which at the heart of it, it came from McCarter and English. Um, I sued them for veterans discrimination. In my opinion, they intentionally hired the chairman of the Port Authority's law firm. The chairman of Port Authority is named Kevin O'Toole. He has a son named Kevin O'Toole, who is a partner at McCarter and English, who I'm suing for veterans discrimination. I worked with the Port Authority with really no issues for 7 years. And I got a text message after I sued the McCarter and English for veterans discrimination. And the text message came from my primary point of contact for the Port Authority for the last couple of years on the swim, at least the last three. And basically, he stated if I said anything negative about the chairman or his law firm, we would lose all access to the World Trade Center, and the Port Authority wouldn't provide any supporting assets. Well, I can tell you what happened was I kind of kept that in my pocket. One of the things that was happening that I found out was they were reaching out, the Port Authority was reaching out to all these vital support entities of the swim and relaying that if I was part of this swim, it would not happen. Now, this is a swim that I founded and started and led for 7 years. They soon thereafter, the Navy SEAL Foundation decided they didn't want to move forward the next year. And so once I realized what happened there, and I had a friend tell me on an ultra track hike that he talked to that same Port Authority official and told them that he said he was worried about his job and it was coming from Port Authority leadership. I decided to amend my complaint and sue the chairman of the Port Authority directly and the Port Authority. I think it's a disgrace. I think it's a disgrace because to punish me, really, for basically suing the law firm for veterans discrimination, and a lot of that veterans discrimination was based on my veterans advocacy and also because I've had different perspectives than the woke ideology that has really, I don't think most Americans realize within the legal professions is extremely heavy. And so they now think I just told you how beautiful that event was and how much beauty it does in healing for so many good people. That's one of the reasons, and I'll tell you something else. And this is the truth. And I'm actually ashamed to say this and embarrassed in a way. And it's something, unfortunately, I have to live with myself for the rest of my life. But one of the things McCarter and English did, uh, in my opinion, right before once I was kind of vocal, in my opinion, they started making a very hard left turn publicly, supporting BLM and all these other kind of very kind of far left, gender fluidity, kind of political type of stances that I don't think a law firm should be involved in, right? In my opinion, they were doing that because it was virtually signaling to the New York City legal market, which is a substantial portion of their revenue. But Bill Brown was on the other side. There was prominent attorneys on their side that were, and all the podcasts and blogs. It seemed like, in my opinion, that they were extremely anti-Trump and promoting, and which, in my opinion, a lot of lawfare, basically BS indictments designed to try to get any way possible President Trump off the ballot. And so Bill Brown's on his LinkedIn post started saying things differently. And I'm called in I'm advocating for veterans equality and things like that. I'm called in and they're asked if I'm okay now. I had a partner, ask me how many people I killed. And then all of a sudden, what do? I'm a commercial litigator. And basically, I represented banks. And mostly it was on loan defaults, trying to work out modifications, payment history. All of a sudden, they assigned me almost 80 to 90%, nothing but child molestation cases defending basically pedophile priests. That's just the truth. And I was, I'm a father of a little girl. I'm a father of a son as well. And to be sincere, I found it, I hated it. Like, I found it disgusting, appalling. And to be sincere, in my opinion, I believe that some of these individuals should have been shot right in the face. Uh, and one of the things I learned, though, is not the lesson they were trying to teach me. They were trying to put my nose in shit. But the real lesson I learned, and this is so important, the real lesson I learned was on all these fact patterns, the Catholic Church did so much to try to muzzle these victims, right? And it was terrible. They would move these pedophile priests. There would be accusations, accusations, and then they'd move the damn dude to another place away. And he'd do the same thing. He'd like shuffling these bad guys around instead of holding them accountable. But the real lesson was not addressing the problem, right? Not protecting their own, not protecting kids. And then here's the other thing. When, even though sometimes it took many years, to me, the big victory is when they spoke up, when these kids spoke up. And so now the truth is, I have to look in the mirror and I have to say, it's the truth. I hate myself a little bit for it. For money, I've represented some of these pedophile priests. Now it's the only work that those liberal. But in the end, I'm a man, and that was the decision I made. I should have walked out. I should have said "f you" and left. And maybe I would have. To be honest with you, it's the biggest firm in New Jersey. I'm blackballed. The truth is, I am blackballed at any big firm in around this area. But that's what I should have done. But I was a coward. And I have because I view myself as a protector, so it really bothers me. But one of the big lessons I learned is I learned that speaking up is so important. Speaking up is so important. And so that's the whole thing with this law firm, my lawsuit. My lawsuit, if I win or lose, and trust me, I'm putting up an epic legal fight. And I am throwing down, like, I am throwing the F down legally. But Uh, that is the big lesson here is speak up. And so guess what? I spoke up against that woke law firm, canceling me out, putting my nose in it. There's nothing else they could have done to me that I could have put my nose in shit more than what they did to me. And not only that, they threatened my very livelihood. I can't get a job at any big law firm in New Jersey. They threaten my very ability to earn a livelihood. If it wasn't for Tim Parlatore, I could be a homeless veteran, 100%. My law degree wouldn't mean anything in this state because no big law firm will hire. And and now what did they do? Think about it. They purposely, in my opinion, targeted a beautiful event to punish me. And so guess what? I sued the chairman. I sued the Port Authority. Why? Because I learned the lesson from those poor kids, man. The minute you speak up and let everybody know, it changes the dynamics of it. Maybe they win the law case, maybe, but I'm putting up a hell of a fight. But here's the thing: people know. People know.
There's always a fight. There's always an opposition at some level. And the message that I take from what you're sharing with us is to have values and to stand up for what's important to one. I'm deeply appreciative of the swim, the adventure therapy, and what that's able to do for a community. I recognize sponsors come and go for a variety of different reasons, some of which they can share, some of which they don't. We can understand some and others we don't. There are the corporate decisions that are made every day of the week, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate that the test of the man isn't what you say about yourself, but it's about how you make others feel. And I can appreciate how others feel showing up for the swim event, for participating, for speaking at the event, for donating their time in training, their time at the event, and money to celebrate the first responders and those that are putting it on the line every day of the week. I'm sorry you've had these rough patches and experiences. I think they define us in many ways. So I think the discomfort creates grain and grit, and the grain and grit then inform us on how to move forward. Um, Walk not with concern over past decisions. Why they happen don't matter, but what you're doing with your time now moving forward is what's critical. And the upcoming New York City SEAL swim is going to be another epic venture. Bill, we're coming to the top of the hour in the show now. If someone would like to get in touch with you for a consultation, for advisement, to learn more about the swim, for legal guidance and or the legal issues that are currently being debated, how would you like one to do that?
The best way would to be contact me on LinkedIn. I love Parlatory Law Group. We take great honor in representing men and women who served in the military, who police officers and firefighters, those with the guardian spirit. You could check me out on LinkedIn. That's William Brown, Navy SEAL. I'll pop right up, and I think that's the best way. Send me a message, and I'll follow up.
Bill, thank you. You made a comment earlier that I want to circle back on. You said that the swim is political. There's some political theory and ideation to it, but it's not political. It's a celebration. And I know that that's not what you shared. It wasn't literal. It's not a political rally, but rather a celebration of everything that's patriotic, that the country stands for. And you open the show by saying how diverse and welcoming you are of everyone that wants to participate. So I think that's a celebration as well. As we conclude, let me say appreciation first for the time, for the trust, and for you saying yes to the podcast. Let me congratulate you for SEAL Team 8. Let me congratulate you for the law degree earned the hard way. For the firm that made you a partner, celebration to them. To any and all whistleblower fights, that's an endeavor, emotional, financial, intellectual. And for me, an exclamation point is the swim that grew from 33 operators to over 320 swimmers. That, for me, is valor in motion. And that speaks to those who came before you, those who are serving now, and those who are still to come. So friends, family, and cohorts, let's recognize the work continues. There's a permit fight. There will always be politics as there are different points of view. We celebrate all points of view here. The living veterans still finding their way home, reach out, ask for help. Thank you for your service. Bill, this is not a finish line. It won't be next year or the following year. It is a marker. And the podcast here is for transmissions of clarity, for guests and audiences to form their own opinions. Let me salute and thank you, your brotherhood, and your friends for your service, your mission, the swim, and everything you hold dear. Friends, family, and cohorts, that's a wrap. Bill, thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you, brother. Honor to be here.